What's up YouTube? I've got another full poster walkthrough for you today. Now this is of a music theme poster called Beatlab. So let's jump straight into Photoshop and I'm going to walk you through each step one by one. Okay, so coming into Photoshop here, this is the original poster design. Now you can see it's just a duotone with yellow and black, and there's a lot of kind of grunge textures, some cool kind of like a detailed grain and almost fabric looking textures. Now there's a lot of distress effects in this one, and you know, I love making stuff like this when there's a whole bunch of different typography, and there's even some image correction in here as well. So let's jump straight into the new canvas. I'm gonna do 3840 by 4800 pixels. Everyone knows this by now. 300 ppi. Let's go. So now I'm just gonna bring in this first background image. Now initially off the rip, all you can see as the background image is this kind of like yellow grainy corner coming in here, but you'll see that this is the original. And now the main process I've taken to create this effect is using the threshold layers. So I'm going to come down to adjustment and add a threshold. And now you can see as I slide this bar, we're going to hide and reveal dark and light areas. I want just the top left corner to be open, because this, once a gradient map is applied, is going to become that yellow color that you can see in the original. So I'm going to slide it to about here. Okay, here. Now I'm going to add in a grid system here so we can arrange everything in a layout and it's all organized and aligned. So I'm going to come up to View, Guides, New Guide Layout. Now I've gone for 5 columns, 100 gutter and 100 margin all round. I'm going to add in a few rows just as a visual reference, but I'm not really going to stick to these too tight. I'm going to just use it quite loosely. So I'm just going to hit OK here, and I'm going to paste in again that same image. So now I'm going to create a rectangle mask, which is going to be the view space for this image. So I'm going to drag a rectangle using these rows, and then I'm just going to drag this rectangle under, and I'm going to create a clipping mask on this onto this rectangle. Now from here I can shift it around to a position that I like, but I'm going to shrink it down in scale so that we can see kind of the majority of the figure here. And now although we've just got this white color, it's not going to matter because we're going to add in a threshold and it's going to blend together. So let me just add in another threshold layer just above this image layer here. So come down to adjustments, threshold, and then again on this properties slider, we're going to just play around with this value, see if we can get a good balance where you can still define the image for what it is, but there is enough contrast for it to still remain kind of visually interesting. So I think here's a good level where you can still understand that it's someone holding a microphone. So you can see like here, a little bit more of his chain gets revealed, but I kind of had to pick unless I'm using 2 threshold layers, but I'm not going to do that in this case. So I'm going to settle around there, and then I'm going to come back onto this image layer and I'm going to hit mask. Now with a black brush selected, just pick the soft round brush. I'm going to shrink this down in size. I'm just going to very lightly mask out this kind of overlaying rectangle shape here, just the edge of the image. There we go. Now I was going to drag in the second image here, which is this. Now this is the same model from the same photographer, and I'm going to link them both in the caption. So now you can see here, I kind of want a little bit more space in this corner, so I'm just going to kind of shift these rows as a layout. So I'm just going to take all these layers apart from the background layer. I'm just going to shift these up a little bit. So yeah, I am just sticking to this row section really loosely, but here is okay. And now you can see if I was to drag this small image under the threshold layer, because it's the same threshold value as this image, it's not balanced effectively. So I'm going to create another threshold, and you can see when I do this, it's just going to apply to that image, however much I balance it. And I'm going to say, you know, once I play around, you can see what kind of areas are getting hidden. I'm going to say around here is a good midpoint for just maintaining the detail in the piece. Now, all of the typography on this initial reference is just 2 typefaces. One typeface is just used for this elite sounds here. Everything else is the same. Now it's called owners. So I'm just going to add in some text here, and I'm going to make this some solid white text. So yes, owners bold. Now what I'm going to type in is Beatlab. I'm going to make sure it's in all caps. And then when I come over to the character panel, which I'm just going to open up from Windows up here, it's going to set the track into optical. And now maybe even bring this in to about -10. So now using these grid lines just as a rough guide, I'm going to just size these up until it's the full width of the margins. I can even use the center align tool here just to make it more specific. And now I want the actual text itself to be aligned with the margins rather than the text box. So here is good. And now I'm going to stretch this vertically by holding Option and Shift, and you can see the effect that it creates here. Now, I think this works really well for this style of poster. It can be considered kind of anti-design, but I believe visually it works a lot with a very specific poster style. So I'm going to continue using it for this one. And now I'm going to just adjust the kerning here on this one. So I'm going to hold Option and use the arrow keys to just shimmy the letters in a little bit. But you can see here, it goes between 0 and 20. It goes in increments of 20. So I'm going to just type in -10 here, just to get a good kind of mid-ground for that. And then just assure that it's still within the margin lines. Now I'm going to repeat the same step with the text sound system, except I'm going to do more of a horizontal size here. So this is the initial size. So now I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to set the track into about 200 so it's spread out. And now I'm going to shrink this down vertically. So then again, repeat the same step. Make sure that this is kind of aligned within the margins near enough. Now visually I think it's quite interesting because it's kind of representing the variable nature of music. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to paste in the text just to save me typing it all out again. But I'm going to show you the formatting for this. So again, text box, owner's bold, 12 point size. And I'm actually going to set this to optical. I'm going to do that on the right paragraph as well. And then just on each, just make sure that the text or the height of the text box is aligned. And now, yeah, you can just select them both, just drag them around however you need. And now just to add in this kind of like scripture Elite Sounds text, I'm just going to show you here. So now with that typed in, I'm just going to center align it, bring it up here. And now the typeface is called Sloop. I'm going to make sure that capitalization is not on. Once again, center align this. And I want it to kind of extend just over the margin. So it's kind of just about going out the page. Make sure it's on top. And then I'm going to come down to effects and add a stroke. Now this stroke is just going to be a black stroke. So just use the eyedropper on the background. I'm going to keep it maybe around 3 or 4. Set it to 3 for the moment. And I'm actually going to set the text color to yellow, which is what we're then going to use for the remainder of our text. So I get a nice kind of vibrant yellow here. Got that stroke applied. And there we go. We've got the majority of the text coming together now. So I can see here I've got this kind of like, again, really heavily vertically stretched Elite Sounds here. And then just outlined. So once again, if I come back over to this owner's typeface, I'm just going to type in Elite Sounds in all caps and just drag this width-wise into the area. So I'm going to take it from the margin, maybe just to about here. Now I want it to align with the top of this bottom image and the bottom margin. So I'm going to place it about here, hold shift and extend, and you're going to see that the top half is going to get brought down as well. So center it and then hold shift and option, and you're going to extend it both ways. Now from here, just pin down the placement, make sure it's set in right. I'm just going to bring down this top half a little bit, and then once again come down to effects, stroke. I'm going to set the inside stroke to a white color, press OK, and then set this fill selection box down to 0. And you can see already this text effects is now just being created. Now all that's remaining on this poster is we've got this sound icon here. Now this is simply just sourced from Google Images. It's just a vector icon that I found that just fit the theme perfectly. So I'm just going to slide that in here. And now you can see that I've got the scale slightly wrong compared to the original. So what I'm going to do is just bring this image down slightly, stretch this text a little bit less, just make sure that's lined back up again. And this is just to kind of fill the space optimally. So now from here, we're just going to create this label design. Now this is, again, very simple, just simply text and small visual assets. So I'm just going to open this grid line back up. Now I'm going to drag in a rectangle, and then with this, I'm also going to fill it in the same yellow color we've used for the text. Now, this is all interchangeable, so I'm going to go back and change this once we've added the gradient map. But what I have done is just duplicated this sound icon, shrunk that down, and I'm just assured that that is above the rectangle. I'm going to come on effects and color overlay, and I'm going to make that black. Right now I've just dragged in my logo here. Let me just get rid of this properties panel. So I'm just going to shrink that right down. And you can see here compared to the original that, we've got this really kind of like wide one going on, and the scale has been a little bit different. But the way I'm going to resolve that by just bringing this text in a bit, making it a little bit more vertically stretched, and then increasing this image size. So say about there is good. So then we can just bring this text back in. Now there we go. Now I'm just going to just drag this across. So, just kind of doing a little bit of troubleshooting here. Drag this sound icon over here. So I'm just going to paste in these assets because it's very simply, just type out what you want. But all I've done is I've used the rectangle tool to create this line here. Simply, I'm still using that owner's bold font. So I've typed that in with the quotation marks, shrunk this text size down a bit and just added in some small details. Now this Beatlab typeface here is the same as the Elite Sounds one at the top of the page. Just going to make sure that these two yellow colors match, and there we go. So now I've all the assets edited in, we can just move on to the texturing and coloring now. Now on the original, you can see a lot of kind of small detailed effects. We've got these kind of paint splat assets coming on here, as well as these distress lines and almost like a noise kind of effect on these visuals. Kind of got like these scratched up edges of the text, and they align with this diagonal texture coming on. So let's just start with these. Now, there's a few methods you can take to do this. There is a lazy approach and a more detailed approach. So overall, what I'm doing to create them is use a displacement map. Now, the lazy approach would be combine all your layers into one using Command, Option, Shift, and E. Apply the displacement map to this, and it will apply it to all of the effects on here. Now, because this poster has a lot of assets that are varying in size, so we've got a really big headline typeface here, and then some small typeface down here. If you were to use the same displacement value for all of them, it's going to be a lot heavier on one, it's going to be a lot heavier on the smaller text, and a lot lighter on the bigger text. So the way to work around that is to displace each asset individually. For the sake of time for the video, I'm just going to do it all on one, but I will show you how I would do it, or how I have done it in the original poster. So for example, this text here, really large in scale, but because it's just an outline, we don't want the effects to be too heavy. So my process for this would be to select the layer, and I always create a duplicate, and I hide the original. The reason for this is that once I've converted the text to smart objects and started adding effects, I can't turn it back into live text again. So I always keep a spare just in case I mess up the effects. So now once I've created a copy, I use my binding, which is Command Option S, because I have set this to convert to smart objects. but you would right click and convert to smart object here. Now I'm going to come up to filter, distort, and displace. Now you can change the scale here. This is the reasoning, because each time you use displacement, you have to use a different scale. So now I'm going to select this film dust texture here, which I'm going to link in the description below. And these are amazing for displacement maps because they give you a lot of fine details, and they don't make everything blurry. So you can see here it's almost like paint splats. You know, it's got these really inconsistent, distressed outlines. It's a little bit splatty, a little bit scratched. Now this is ideal for this style of poster. So now the way I would approach the rest of this is to take each layer individually, add a displacement map, but I would do them all at different values so that they are visually balanced. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to select that layer that we have initially selected. Now, just before I add in the displacement, I'm going to add in the gradient map and color. So I'm going to come down to adjustments and gradient map here. Now I'm going to come onto this gradient slider, and I have a preset here which has been selected, which is just simply yellow to black. This orange I don't even need in, so I'm just going to take out. And now I'm going to just shimmy this down the layers until it is applying to the text and images that I want it to. So I'm just going to keep going down and down and down. I may have to shift around the order of my layers here, but this is ideal. So, you know, we've still got everything, all of the text in white, but we've got the images in yellow and this sound icon in white here. So there we go. So now with all of these applied, I'm just going to add in a few effects because we're going to have to do the displacement map as the final effect because it's going to combine all the layers. So I want to add in a noise layer here to kind of accentuate the image effects. So I'm going to come down to adjustments here and add solid color. Now I'm going to do 80, 80, 80. And now on this color fill layer, I'm going to come up to filter, camera raw filter, and convert this to a smart object. Now on this effects panel on the right hand side, you're going to select this and you're going to select the grain drop down tab. Now I'm going to set this grain to 100 and I'm going to set the size to about 30 and then roughness to about 50 where it is now. I'm going to set OK. And I'm going to change the layer mode to overlay. Now I'm going to drag this down until it is above the images but not above the rest. Now the reason I do this is because if it's underneath a threshold layer, it affects the images differently. So you can see if I hide and reveal this layer, it's kind of adding and reducing this grain effect. So let me drag it below both thresholds. And now on this image makes a big difference, and it is the same with this smaller image down here. Okay, so now I have all of our layers in the correct order and coloring complete. I'm going to use Command Option Shift and E to duplicate and combine all visible layers. Now I'm going to convert this to a smart object and I'm going to name this copy just because this is now every layer combined. So from here, I'm going to go filter, distort and displace. Now I'm going to set 20 and I'm going to select this film dust texture. So now the first thing you're going to notice when you use a displacement layer is it's going to shift it. Now you should keep these in the place that it shifts it to if you're using the same texture as an overlay because it's ingrained into the actual image. But in a case like this where I'm not going to use it as an overlay, I'm just going to use the arrow keys to shift it back into its original position. And there we go. Now you can see as I zoom in, we've got all of these really subtle distressed effects around the edges of the images, around all of the text and assets here, really add into this grain visual. And there we go. It's this nice kind of like splat. So now the last effect we have to add is that splat effect. So I'm going to create a new layer here and I'm going to press B for my brush. So now I have this brush here that I've had for a while now, but you can source these brushes online very easily if you're just going to type in paint splash Photoshop brush and you'll get a lot of options come up. Now I'm going to press I and I'm going to select this yellow color and I'm going to increase this in size and I'm just going to tap and tap and tap and keep doing Command Z to undo just in case or just until you get the ideal splat. Now, this is going to vary every time you press it because the brushes are inconsistent, but I'm just going to play around with this until I get where I want it. I might add in some just up here, maybe some across here. And now what you can also do is then change your color to black. So I'm going to eyedrop a black color and you can just splat some over the images. So I quite like this effect here. And now, yeah, with this all done, we can just move on to the final texture layers. So just pasting in this texture layer I'm going to use here. Now this is sourced from Grunge Studio. He's got these really cool like kind of freebie textures, which I will link in the description. I'm going to select the layer mode of this onto screen. You can see immediately everything becomes a lot more washed out and grey. So the detail is still here, but we're going to go into the levels tab using Command L. Now we're going to reduce this kind of grey value and make it a little bit darker, just like this. So I'm going to drag in this black slider, play around with the contrast here. If you drag the mid-tone slider inwards, you can see more detail is getting revealed. But I'm just going to keep this balance for the moment because I want it to be quite dark. So I'm going to say about here is good. Then I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to clear this smart filter. I'm then going to set this value to exclusion so that it targets the light colors, and I'm going to set the opacity to 50. Once again, just open the levels tab and you're just going to create a readjustment here to adjust for this section. So there, I'm just going to zoom in on the white area here so that we can actually tell how much this texture is affecting the layers. So yeah, just bring that slider in. You see if I bring the midtones to the left, it's going to make this a lot more gray. So I want a good balance here. So that's probably about good. Zoom out and there we have it. Here is our final poster design. Now, as always, I want to thank you very much for watching until the very end. I hope these tutorials can be useful to you in one way or another, or give you some insight into my process. So if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll see you again very soon.